You are listening to How to Get Over Your Ex, bonus episode, Getting Back Together with an Ex with Madi Maple. Welcome to How to Get Over Your Ex, a podcast on getting over your ex without it just taking time. I'm your host, Breakup Coach Dorothy. Let's turn your pain into power and your heartbreak into happy.
Hello guys, it is Madi here and I am with my good friend Dorothy, and today is an episode that I don't think I've ever done an episode like this. Just the how we're doing it and the transparency of it and what it's about. This is something just so brand new, but I'm so grateful that I have Dorothy by my side. You guys might know Dorothy. She was actually one of the first people I had on my podcast, Breaking Butterfly. And then I was also a guest on her podcast called How to Get Over Your Ex, which is such a great one, by the way. And it's so funny. I actually got to listen to Dorothy's podcast from the place of being broken up, which I never thought I would be able to do. But Dorothy actually helped me a lot when I was going through my breakup. So her podcast is freaking awesome. And yeah, we have been friends for a couple years now. It's been very interesting. We went through some very similar experiences this past year, kind of simultaneously. Both of our stories are very, very different and have a lot of different energies and different lessons. But they're also the same in so many ways. And we were just catching up last week and we were talking about how we so badly want to open up about what we've been going through, but it's just been so difficult for both of us. Like I said, like this is going to be one of the most like honest, transparent, we don't even know if we're going to release this yet type of episode. But yeah, we just were feeling like doing episodes alone was just feeling really intense and dramatic, and why not do it together? So last year we both were engaged and we both broke up with the men that we were engaged to, and then we're both back together with the men we were engaged to, which is, again, actually it's really so crazy that we're both going through this because it's such a unique situation. So yeah, we've been wanting to open up to both of our audiences about it. This is going to go on both podcasts most likely, and yeah, we just want to do it together. We want to have conversation. We want to ask each other the right questions and hold each other in so much love as we share these stories, because I do really think both of our stories are going to help so many people. So I'm excited. That was a long intro. Dorothy's just sitting there nodding and smiling like, yes, yes, yes. But yeah, Dorothy, say hello.
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to do this with you, Maddie. Like, you just open up the floor so well. I am really glad. I mean, we got together just last week to talk about retreats and things because Maddie's done a number of retreats. I'll be going and doing some of my own retreats. And then as we were doing that, I was like, Maddie, you have got to tell me, like, what is going on? Where have you been? What has been happening for you? Because I see obviously like the Instagram side of you, but I know there's like the back end side of your actual life. And I was really excited to catch up. And once we started chatting, I was like, girl, we need to talk and we need to, I feel like this is a topic that should be talked about and brought up just in general. But then, of course, too, in my own life, I would love to openly talk about it, but it's so kind of scary at times. So I'm just grateful that we get to do this together. It's going to be so fun.
Yeah, I'm excited. It feels so much less scary. I feel like this is also just like a important lesson of like how important community is as well. That's been like one of the biggest things in my life this past like year or two, is just being with other women and realizing that you are not alone is one of the most healing things ever. Like sitting in a circle with other women and someone sharing a experience so specific and being able to relate fully, like none of us are alone at all. And yeah, I'm excited to dive into this and relate to you and
Yes.
have others relate to us. And yeah. Okay, so we have a couple questions to kind of guide us here, but I guess we obviously have to start at the elephant in the room of just how we got back together with our exes in general, right? That's been the question that's been asked most for me, at least. Like literally, like my DMs and my hotline submissions are full of like, how did you and Henry reconnect?
It's so funny. My number one question right now is like, am I single? The number of times I've been asked if I'm single, because I haven't even told people that I'm back together with Jake. So I think that that's kind of like the funny part for me, is that this is actually going to be the first time that people truly, like anyone that's not in my inside circle,
Yeah,
know that I'm back together after a called off engagement. So
I I
this is
didn't I
exciting.
didn't know that. I broke the news in like the first 2 minutes of this episode, so surprise.
It's great. I love it. I think it's great. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, well, maybe you
Yeah.
want to start then and just kind
Okay.
of
Yeah, I'll
give
just
the story.
yeah. So, gosh, it's so full. I know we were talking about this at the beginning of like there's so much like backstory. So I don't exactly know where to start. But to answer the question of how did I get back together with the person who, we had our called off engagement, it kind of all, I don't feel like we were ever not together, to be quite honest.
Mm.
When I went through a miscarriage back in November, that was kind of the catalyst to everything that kind of went wrong, or at least I believed it was the catalyst. I do want to just be open and transparent as well, as like I'm telling my side of the story. My partner has a very different side of his story, and that is totally honored. And just know that you're only getting my perspective. But when I was pregnant, we were engaged and we had plans to elope on 11/11/22. And I had what people would call cold feet, and that I was questioning a lot of what was going on. And I wanted to be sure we weren't getting married just because I was pregnant. I wanted to like know that it was for because we deeply wanted to be together. And he had proposed before I was pregnant, so he clearly very much wanted to marry me. I just was very much in my head. I had a lot of hormonal things happening. Um, and the pregnancy before that pregnancy was an ectopic pregnancy. So a lot of fear. I had so much fear, Maddie, in that
Mm.
experience because I was constantly afraid that I was going to have another ectopic pregnancy or miscarry, which I did. Um, I was just full of a lot of fear. And so it was really difficult going through that. And eventually I postponed the elopement, which really led to like a cascading events of I postponed the elopement, which obviously anyone on the receiving end of that, it feels so full of hurt and betrayal and rejection. So in that moment, my partner was experiencing a lot of those kinds of emotions, and then we miscarried. So then not only are we experiencing the loss and the devastation of this child, we were also experiencing um, this wobbly time in our relationship because he was kind of like, you just told me we're postponing this elopement, and it just was a cascading of events that it was like one thing after another where everything started to unravel and unroll. And then when it came down to the miscarriage, it wasn't like no miscarriage is simple, but I didn't just miscarry. I went through a number of problems where I tried to do an at home miscarriage that was induced with medicine, and then it turned into an emergency surgery a month later because I couldn't stop bleeding. And so I was literally bleeding out for the month of November, December. I have this emergency miscarriage. And then after that, it's kind of like we both went through so much trauma that we both just shut down and we couldn't be there for one another. We could barely be there for ourselves and we couldn't be there for one another. And we experienced so much trauma that he was showing up in a way that I just felt like I didn't resemble the person that I fell in love with. I was showing up in a way that didn't resemble the person he fell in love with. And we were just falling apart. And that's kind of when it was clear that the engagement is truly called off. We're going our separate ways. I bought a home. I moved into my new home. And our rebuilding didn't start until really one very impactful perspective change on my end. I felt like I had to pull away, or not pull away in the sense of like I didn't want to be his fiance. I very much wanted to be his fiance. I still want to be his fiance, all of these things. But I had to very much remove myself as a fiance and as his girlfriend and show up as his best friend and show up as a friend. Like I was friends with him before we ever started dating. And I had to go to this mental space of, if my best friend just suffered this postponed engagement, this devastating loss of our child at 13 weeks, all of this stuff, like if my best friend experienced that and, he or she was coming to me with these words and these feelings and their thoughts and everything they're experiencing, how would I be handling it? What would I be thinking? What would I be doing? And it was very different than what was happening in the moment. In the moment, I was having trauma responses. I was having urgent emotions. I was graspy. I was needy. I was like very scared of just losing everything, like losing the baby, losing my house, losing my partner all at once. It just was extremely overwhelming. So when I did that, it was a lot easier to have conversation. We could barely kind of converse for a while there because we were just experiencing so much trauma and so much loss and trying to like be each other's fiancés where we're like not agreeing on certain parts. It was just a breakdown. And so I got
Yeah.
to be his best friend. And when I started to become his best friend, I could start having these conversations with no strings attached, with like no attachment, with just pure like compassion and love and grace for the fact that this human being is experiencing so much, and like I can relate to that and I can love him through that. And I wanted to be there for him in that way. I wanted to be a soft landing space. And really, the only way I knew how to do that was to completely remove myself from fiance and like girlfriend mode
Yeah.
and go into like friend mode. And that
Well,
didn't mean I didn't want that. Does that make sense?
yeah. Can I just say and interrupt that, like, I think that is being, like, ultimately a life partner. Like, that is part of a romantic relationship, is being able to have, like, it doesn't have to be all romance and cutesy, lovey, like, all the time. Like, I think actually having a partner and being in, like, a long-term romantic relationship, or not even long term, that's not the right word, like a committed romantic relationship, is being able to just like be the friend. Like I think that is where
Mm-hmm.
a lot of relationships can go wrong, and we can talk about this later, just about like relationships in general. But I think there's just so many expectations of like what it should look like, and that you should be like super head over heels in love like all the time and always be attracted to them, and like something's wrong if you're not having sex. And I just don't see it that way. And yeah, again, we'll talk later more about just these non-traditional ways of relationship. But what I keep hearing, like as you're saying all of that, is like, no, that is you being the fiance, is being able to push everything aside and just love this person for who they are and be able to just be there for them as a human being. I think that is like the most romantic fiance thing you can do, in a sense. Of course, in your mind, it was like, okay, I'm not the girlfriend, but do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I think that's a beautiful way of putting that, Maddie. Thank you so much. I do also agree. It was in the moment for me, like, I so badly wanted the baby. The baby was tied into our relationship. And so I wanted to try again immediately. He was like, I can't right now. And both of those can and should be honored. But it was so hard because then I was making it mean like, do we have the same want matches now? Like, do we want the
Yeah.
same lives even? Like, do we want the same things anymore? Like, I can't tell. And so I really had to, like you said, step back, you know, remove all the strings and the attachments and just allow him to be his human and allow myself to be my human and recognize like we get to work through this in a different way and I want to work on this. It just looks extremely different than anything I've experienced before.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't feel like I ever got, I don't know how to say like get back together. Like, how did we rekindle it? It was more like, I don't think we ever were fully removed from each other's lives. It was a transition of relationships almost.
Yeah.
It's like we called off our engagement, we backed up from each other, we got our own houses, and we then came back as friends, but we were in contact the whole time. It was never something where I ever went like no contact with him or
Mm,
completely exited him from my life.
yeah. What would you say to someone that mm, I'm not sure about this because I don't think I've listened to this episode of yours, but how do you feel about contact versus non-contact? Because my breakup, I'll get into my story, was very much non-contact, like
Mm-hmm.
no, like zero contact. So again, it's like we went through the
Mm-hmm.
same things, but so entirely different. But I don't know, some people might listen and be like, okay, well, that's what I want. Like maybe I can just be best friends with my ex and then like it'll all work out.
Yeah.
Like what would you say about your experience?
I mean, I don't feel like my experience was like a traditional breakup.
Yeah.
like, like I think that
It wasn't at
when
all.
it comes to no, yeah, when it comes to no contact, I do believe that it's not a requirement. But you have to look at the reasons why you're doing it and be honest with yourself as to why you think you want to stay in contact with your ex.
Mhm.
Um, I don't believe that no contact is required for you to be able to get over your ex. I think that there are too many people who have to co parent. There's people who work with their exes. There's people who are in situations that no contact is really just not a practical
Yeah.
thing. Now, if you can do no contact and it's working for you, I think that's amazing. But I don't like when my clients are trying to implement a made up rule and then they fail at it and then they shame themselves for it,
Totally.
thinking like, what's wrong with me? There's something wrong with me because I can't follow this made up rule. Let's like look at reducing desire and attachment, like the root cause of a breakup and like those things. I'd rather be working on root causes to things instead of breakup symptoms. So
Yeah.
when it comes to no contact, I am a believer that there's no like hard and fast rule. I do believe that you can get over your ex even while you're in contact with an ex. However, it just makes it more difficult in a traditional breakup. Um, but I love for my clients to get to a place of like emotional freedom and that they don't have to worry about running into their ex. They're not concerned about like a text message or a phone call. They feel
Mhm.
very emotionally free in that way. And so, regardless of whether or not you get a lot of practice with that while being, in contact with an ex or not, it's all very neutral. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah. I love that. I mean, no, your situation's totally, I feel like almost exclusive to, yeah, just like a traditional breakup in that sense. But I was still just curious about your thoughts in general about
Well,
it.
and even talking, yeah, and even talking about this, Maddie, it's like very eye opening even to myself. Is I don't actually know if we ever broke up. Like we have
Yeah.
a called off engagement, but that didn't mean we weren't dating. Like
Yeah.
no part of me felt like I was single. No part of me felt like I was going to go on a date with someone else or that I needed to, get over my ex. I wanted to get over my ex in that I wanted to get to a place of non attachment.
Mhm.
I wanted to work on not feeling attached. I wanted to work on, realizing that I can have a baby this year, regardless of whether or not my ex is in the picture. I can live my life, all the things that I teach my clients. I wanted to do all of that, but I did it while I was still in a relationship with him. It's just the relationship wasn't fiance, engaged, we're getting married. It was we're dating to get back to baseline, to figure out what's going on, and if truly we are in alignment with one another still after this extremely traumatic event. Because we also had to figure out there was like two main lessons we were moving through. It was this is what happened when we went through trauma together. It didn't work well. What are we going to do next time?
Yeah.
And then we are still like going through the lesson of the fallout of the trauma and the feelings and the thoughts that we both took on from that experience, and how do we move through it together now. It's really, honestly, as I talk about it, I'm like feeling a lot better about it, because I'm like, it's a very mature way of doing it, but it's just when you're in it, it feels messy. And that's why I've been so hesitant to share with
Yeah.
everyone about what's going on, because it's messy. It's not clean. It's not organized. I can't sit here and deliver you a present with a bow on it that says, here's this lesson and how to do it yet.
Yeah.
And that's the way I've run my life up into this point. So
Yeah.
it's just been interesting.
Me and Dorothy were talking about that exactly, of like, yeah, my whole life and like specifically my business. It's like I go through something, I learn the lesson, and then I share it. And then I go through something, and then I learn the lesson, and then I share it. Okay, well, I've been going through it for a year now, and I've learned lessons along the way, but like it's not, yeah, I feel like this is like that next level of just like growth and evolution. Like it's not as cut and dry as it was in the beginning. And yeah, it's very hard as like a leader who does want to share their lessons along the way to like show up when it's not fully landed. But again, that's why we're doing this together, because yeah, already like things start to land more just by, I don't know, yeah, having
Talking
conversation
it out.
and talking it out. And yeah, that podcasting has honestly been one of the most healing things for me, because as I just like talk into the microphone, it's like things start to click more and more. But anyway,
Well, and I
yeah.
love how you said it at the beginning. You were kind of like, we're just opening up the conversation. And it just feels good to open up the conversation and say what's like really happening. And we can discuss it further from there, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And there's like, it isn't over, right? We're not like, oh, this happened. Like, this is happening. And we're like letting you guys in on it, which is so vulnerable and so scary. But yeah, I've always felt that I go through what I go through to share it. I've just always like known that. Um, yeah, I'm so glad we're doing
I
this.
love
And
it.
thank you for sharing all of
Well,
that.
yeah, of course. Tell us about you and Henry.
Yeah. Okay. Oh gosh. So yeah, me and Henry, it's so hard to be like, yeah, where do I start? But yeah,
Mhm.
so me and Henry got engaged November 2021, I believe. It was November
Mhm.
2021. And yeah, we were engaged up until April. And yeah, it was such an interesting thing because okay, so I went to this psychic once. I promise this all applies. I went to this psychic once, and she kind of just opened the space, and she can like see your timeline. But then she opens my space and she goes, "Why why are there two timelines? Like, do you know why I would be seeing two timelines?" And I literally immediately broke into tears, and I was like, God fucking damn it. I wanted you to tell me what timeline I'm supposed to be on. I know there's two timelines. There is the timeline where I settle down and I'm with Henry and we get married and we have cats and we have kids and I have a pool and I make snacks for my kids and all the kids want to come to the cool, Lou house. And like, I see that timeline and I want it more than anything. Then there's this other timeline and it's like, traveling the world, going to parties, living a very lavish lifestyle, having all this freedom, blah, 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 blah. I want that lifestyle more than anything. I want both, right? And most people would say, well, you can have both. And that's kind of what the psychic told me. But I still felt this like kind of like I felt kind of torn between like, am I settling and am I not? Like, am I settling by just settling to have a family? Or is that what I truly want? Like, I just felt so confused about like what I want. And so yeah, I kind of ruminated on that for like a really, really, really long time. And this wasn't like me feeling confused. This was like me having like panic attacks and like dreams and like feeling so anxious almost every single day about like, am I on the right path? Am I not on the right path? And it never meant anything about how much I loved Henry or anything like that at all. I just kept feeling like there was this other life that I was supposed to experience. And I met Henry when I was 20 years old. Like, I could not even drink alcohol legally when I met him. And he was 27. So he had already lived like a lot of his life. Like, he he'd already done like the parties and lived in Korea and like traveled and like he's done all the things. I had barely left the country. And I really, before I met Henry, I worked at In-N-Out for 5 years, which is like just very strenuous. And pretty much I just never had freedom. Like I never really got to experience life. And so, yeah, it just kept creeping up on me and creeping up on me of like, I want to live this like life of freedom. And at that point in our relationship, Henry just like was not on board in that sense. Like he wanted to just like settle down, not settle, just like settle down a little bit. And I was just like freaking the fuck out. So obviously there's like more to the story, but it came to a head where I was like, what did you call it? Want matches?
Yes. Yes. We want, like, do you want the same wants? Because it's
Yeah.
important to me that I like find a partner who just genuinely wants all the same things that I want. So it
Yeah.
doesn't feel like I'm like pulling someone along, dragging them along, or trying to give them a presentation as to why we should do something, like that
Yes.
whole energy.
And that's exactly what was happening, but to the point where I was actually getting angry and like frustrated that he wasn't living life the way that I wanted him to. Or like there was a point in our time where I literally would convince him to like be an online coach. I was like, you should just be an online coach. Like, I don't get why you don't want to be an online coach. We can just like travel the world. He's like, babe, I don't want to do that. I'm like, yes, you do. I'm like, I know you do. I, okay, let me tell you guys something. 2 years ago, I thought I knew everything. I know nothing. I literally know nothing, but I thought I did. I thought, like, this is how we're supposed to live. This is how things are supposed to be. But anyway, he wanted very, very different things. He was thinking about going down a career path that was so different. Like, I had gotten deep into spirituality and he just wasn't there. Like, we were just so separate in so many ways, from our goals to our beliefs to how we wanted to live on a day to day to how we wanted our futures to look. And I was just like, we are so not aligned. And I couldn't see how we would be. And I let it get to that point. Like, this was like a year and a half of me kind of waiting it out and seeing if we were going to like rise up together. And then I just felt like we weren't. Like, I feel like we were both rising up, just like literally away from each other. And so it finally got to that point, and unfortunately, like, we were engaged and that sucked. And it, when we got engaged, like I said, there was never any part of me that didn't want to be married. I wanted to be married. But it just got to the point where I couldn't ignore this other timeline that I felt like I needed to experience. So I did. I got invited to Costa Rica, and literally I got invited to Costa Rica, and then Henry asked me if I wanted to stay in LA, and I was like, I hate LA. I was like, no, I can't. Like, I can't stay here. It was just like a breaking point for me. So I left. I got on a plane and flew to Costa Rica, flew to Mexico, and I didn't talk to Henry for like 4 months, I think it was, until we started quite literally running into each other at festivals. And I'm talking like physically running into each other. There was this time at Electric Forest in particular. Well, we saw each other at EDC, which was definitely not 4 months after our breakup, but we had like a little conversation there. We really didn't get to have a conversation after we broke up. Pretty much, we broke up, and he was like, "Get out of the house," and I was like, "Okay," and I left, and we did not speak, not one word, not literally nothing. And so we never got to even have a conversation. It was just like that, like, most heated emotions ever, and then that was it. So EDC, we just started having a conversation, and we like didn't get to finish it. So I actually ended up like staying a day later, and we like met in a park, and we like sat on the grass at this like park. Like, kids are like running around at the playground, and we are like, we just need to say some things. And so it was never like, somebody asked me on Instagram, like, was it like an instant, like, I know I want to get back together with this person, or was it gradual? This whole process was so gradual. Yeah, we like sat at a park together and just like literally tip of the iceberg started the conversation. Then at Electric Forest, I like ran into him in the crowd. I'm pretty sure he like saluted me. Like we literally saw each like we ran into each other and he just like gave me a salute. At one point at Electric Forest, he comes up to me. We have not spoken, you guys. And he has both of his hands shut and he holds out his hands to me and he says, "Pick one." And I'm like, "What the fuck is going on?" And I like pick one and he opens it and it's like this little squishy pink bunny toy. And he just gives me this bunny and I'm like, what is happening? Like I just don't I'm so confused.
I have to say, can I just pause for just a second? Because what I love about this is that you are living in your second timeline, because this whole timeline thing is super relevant. I think so many of us feel this and experience this. We are very different ages. I'm 33, and at 31, 32, I was still having that same experience.
Mhm.
Um, and but what I love about this situation that you're talking about is you are living in your second timeline and only running into him when you are really deep in your second timeline. You're
Yeah.
like living that life, like at these different festivals is where you're running into him, which I think is a really like magical thing to just look at and be aware of. When I was being my most authentic self, pursuing my most authentic desires, he did run into me.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people I see getting trapped in this realm of not living your authentic timeline, trying to run into your ex, and you don't. And that's not to say that you live your authentic timeline and then you're absolutely going to run into your ex. You're going to run into something bigger or better, whether it's your ex or someone new. But
Yeah.
like for your specific situation and the way that you're describing this, I think it's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And that was like I feel like that is what is the most comforting for me. And again, like I'm so glad that we broke up and I had, even those 5 or 6 months of me just experiencing this other lifestyle because now I know. Like I did it. I did the thing. Like I broke up with him. I left. I lived this life. And then when I ran into him, I still was able to like choose him. But if I would have never experienced that other timeline, then I probably would have lived my whole life wondering if I was on the right path or if I would have preferred that other timeline and probably would have had like a midlife crisis when I have like kids, right? So,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm just so grateful for that whole experience. And yeah, it was just very serendipitous how it all happened. Like I run into him, like it's just so funny. Um,
And that's your form of having both. Like
yeah,
you did get both, which I think
one
is just so fun.
100%, 100%. And yeah, the other part of it, like we didn't break up just because I wanted the other timeline. It was also just where we were at on our journeys spiritually as well. And I'll kind of like get into that and how amazing Henry is. But yeah, it was also that like I was just exploring these different like beliefs and this different way of like being. And I thought that was something that I would never be able to experience with Henry. Like I never thought we'd be able to like experience like talking about personal development. So that was another part of the like two timelines where like I want to go to like yoga retreats and talk about Eckhart Tolle at dinner and like he's never going to be able to do that with me. Um which we very much do now and not necessarily talk about Eckhart Tolle at dinner, but get to like experience, like actual self-growth together and reading together and stuff like that. So it's like so many different things about these two timelines. But yeah, so we saw each other at Electric Forest. I don't even know what all to share. We had a very fun, beautiful experience at Electric Forest. So let's just say that where I left the next day and I was like, God damn it. Okay. This isn't like this isn't like we just ran into each other like cool whatever. I was like, "Oh my god, something magical is about to happen." And again, but it was very very gradual. A lot of people like they go back to their ex because it's more comfortable and like being alone is harder. But like for me, being alone would have been easier. Like being alone would have been
Okay,
way more
I
comfortable.
agree with this. Okay, this is really, we need to talk about this
Yeah.
because that is exactly like, I felt that. I was like, it's going to be easier for me to just go through this breakup,
Yep.
go our separate ways.
Yep.
And what is going to be extremely difficult for me is to stay. Staying was like the hard part. Staying was the one that was like that route was going to be extremely difficult for me, and it was going to challenge me, and it was going to up level my growth in a way that I've literally never done. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's been unreal how eye opening that was. And actually, I was going to say earlier that we're talking about this kind of from a place of like you left your relationship, and like I just want to say that from someone from the other side who had someone leave, I just want you to listen to Maddie's story and listen to my story and recognize that it was never about the other person. It wasn't about
Mhm.
Henry. It wasn't about him not being enough or not amazing. It wasn't about my partner not being enough or being amazing. It was purely our own stuff, right? Like Maddie wanted to go live out this timeline. For me, the cold feet didn't come from Jake not being an amazing human being. It came from like I had never practiced having a marriage. Like
Yeah.
I've thought about engagement and being like a girlfriend, but I had never practiced this idea of being in a marriage and having a marriage. And like it felt like overwhelmingly kind of nervous. I felt nervous, and it wasn't about Jake, it was about me.
Yeah.
Um, and so I want anyone listening who's in the opposite side, like, know that it's not about you, even if they say it is. But then going back to what you were saying, I already lost it. What was it that you were saying just now?
I know I lost it too, but it was so good.
It was so good.
Um, it was oh, it would have been easier to just like walk
Yes.
away.
Right. And so just know too that someone who might have left, it might have been easier for them to stay.
Mm,
And it's not that you're a difficult person to be with, like it has nothing to do with you. But I just find it so fascinating going through this whole lesson of like, I want to build a partnership with someone where we stay through the hard times.
yeah.
And I've always wanted that, but I just never like kind of realized that that was going to take a lot of effort on my part as well. Like I constantly thought about having a partner who would stay with me through the thick of it, right? Through good and bad and all of this stuff. But that was also like put on me as well. And like this was the bad. This is the most traumatic experience
Yeah.
I have personally ever experienced. And it is definitely the most traumatic experience that my partner has ever experienced. And going through it together has been unbelievably difficult because we're having different experiences.
Yeah.
And so I started reading, I've been reading all of these books on the best marriages and relationships and love, and psychoanalysts doing all of this research on love. And they talk about this concept called toxic individuality. And I found it really like fascinating because we do live in a world where it's like, get up and go, leave, and like, you deserve better. And like, there is a time and place for that. And I am so like, rah, rah, go, you, and like all
Yes.
of that. I support it all. And I'm like noticing there is a time to stay
One
for me.
100%. And that's honestly why probably by the time that we release this, like I'm doing like this relationship mentorship. And it, yeah, at the beginning of my business, I would just tell girls, like, just dump him, like, bye. Like, see, like, because I was so much in this, like, bad bitch era. Like, I was really coming into my power. And I was like, yeah, even, people will be like, if you're not obsessed with me, like, get the fuck out. Like, I'm the queen. No, no, like, this is about partnership, and it's not always pretty. And it's like, relationships, the expectations that have been put on them is so silly. It's not wrong to stay with someone that you don't think is maybe like the love of your life. It's not wrong to stay with somebody that, yeah, maybe you don't have like the most passionate, crazy, like sexual experiences with. Like, it's not bad to be with someone that you want to be with because like it doesn't look the way that other people like say that it should, or movies make it out to be, or I used to even think like if people got back with their ex that they were like stupid pretty much and that they were just like backsliding and that like, you know,
I remember you talking about this, and I remember being on your podcast and you asked about like what are your thoughts about getting back together with an ex and all of that. And it was just it's so funny like reliving that now.
I'm telling
I
you,
love it.
I
Yeah.
I know nothing. Like I'm going through the craziest spiritual awakening or just like awakening in general recently because everything that I thought to be true and that I felt in my core is still true on so many levels, but I am just like everything is crumbled beneath me and I just have these so just different perspectives on everything. And I'm sure
It's
even
like so fun and so terrifying all at the same time when that happens.
oh yeah, it's
Hmm.
so fun,
Yeah.
but it hurts my ego a lot that like
Yeah.
I don't know everything. I really wish I did.
I know. I feel that same way. I get that. I really do get that. And that's where I like love coming from this place. I really do live my life of from this place of like, there's no good or bad, there's no right or wrong. I'm like
Yeah.
open to it all because there's just I have seen as a breakup coach, I have seen things that I thought I would never see, that I never thought would happen to people. I've seen it. And so I just don't put anything past anyone. And I'm like, we're all crazy AF humans
Yeah.
and I just want to be an alien. So,
Yep. Yep, pretty much.
but the other thing with what you were saying though too is like when it comes to leaving a relationship, if you do authentically know that it's time for you to leave a relationship, it feels really true to you.
Yeah.
Don't beat yourself up because you've been in it for a while. Don't beat yourself up if it's taking you a long while to like actually leave the relationship. Again, I think that we get pressured from this perspective of like you deserve better, dump them, go now. Like
Yeah.
give yourself the space and time and room to experience what you need to experience, to
Yeah.
change your thoughts and feelings that you need to change, to get to a place where you feel solid and comfortable with leaving. Um, don't shame yourself or beat yourself up or participate in negative self talk simply because you haven't left something that feels like you need to leave.
Totally. I love that you say that because yeah, it took me a long time and a lot of times there's just so much confusion as well. Like I said, like I was seriously confused. Like so utterly mixed up in my brain about what was true and what was false and what was my ego and what was my soul and like was it just my ego wanting to live this other timeline or did my soul truly want to experience that or was I just like literally I was like just fucked up, right? And that was honestly like one of the most humbling things about and hardest things about just like getting back together. Like I was saying, like it would have been, and that's how I knew that I wasn't just getting back together just to get back together. Like this was hard and it is still hard. Like we've been back together since October and wow, it's like July right now. That's actually really crazy. Time flies, but I mean, there's still times where like either of us are triggered and we really have to like hold each other through things from like when we were broken up or just things that we are still mending. Like we didn't just go back to the people we were previously. We both became completely different people and had to explore a completely new relationship, which just even added even more to like my awakening and my ego death of like, if I want this to work, I have to be a completely different person. And if I used to think like Henry had to catch up with me. Now I have to try and catch up with Henry. Like if I want to be the type of mature, loving, amazing, caring person that he is, like I need to step it the fuck up because this man, like I've like people, I don't know, before I thought like, oh, people don't really change. No, like people totally do. And like he's like one of the most amazing people I've ever met in my whole life.
Mm,
I feel like I truly have to work really hard every day to be like a better person, which is like the best thing in the world.
he helps you grow and develop. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I
yeah,
think
I
that's
just
like a
never thought we
beautiful
would
part of
get to this. I just never in my wildest dreams envisioned us being where we are. And again, like it took so much like just conversation, and I didn't really finish like the whole story, but we pretty much just kept like meeting up places. Like we'd meet in like Joshua Tree and like get a little Airbnb, and then we'd like meet in Vegas, and then we'd like meet over here. No one knew we were seeing each other. We would like say we were going somewhere else. We'd just like rendezvous everywhere and just talk all night and cry and hold each other and talk about like all the shadows, all the things. And but like, oh my God, it's been so worth it. So worth it. It's just fucking hard. Like there's been so many things I've had to like admit and see about myself that I'm just like, God damn it. It's like the crazy.
Isn't that the best part
It's
though?
the
It's like it
craziest
hurts and it
shadow
also like
work.
feels good.
Yeah, it's the craziest shadow work and the craziest personal development journey I've ever been through in my life.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing that I'm reading a lot about relationships in general is that it's relationships aren't meant to be like all comfort and cuddly, and
Yeah.
you end up like learning and growing through your relationships. And so I find that really fascinating because I always talked for a long time I talked about again these want matches and wanting the same wants, but like what happens when you grow and you change, and what you mentioned of like just being on two different kind of like timelines, growth timelines, and
Mm-hmm.
um it's just really fascinating to look at.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause someone was just asking this in my hotline for my podcast. I can't remember exactly what she said, but yeah, she was just talking about being on different paths. And yeah, before I would have been like, if you're not on the same path, you're not on the same path and you're not in alignment. So like you shouldn't be together. That's what like commitment is. That's what marriage is like being with that person through their like hardest times. I guess like my discussion question for that is like, but how do you know if someone's really just like never gonna like, thank God for me, like Henry really became like the person that was so in alignment for me in so many ways. He's like going through his own journey and his own awakening. But a lot of people maybe aren't going to do that. And like, how do you not waste your time? And how do you like, because you don't want to wait on someone forever. Like, what if they never
Yeah.
get out of their rut? Like, how do you know?
Hmm.
You know?
Yeah. I think that's a great question. I don't know why this is for like coming to my forefront a little bit, Maddie, but um, there's this book called The Art of Loving by Eric Fromm, who's like a psychoanalyst from like way back in the day. And he talks about how loving is not only like there's theory, but like it's an art. Loving is an art, and there's theory, but there's also practice. Just like the art of medicine, you have to have the theory of medicine, but you also have to have like the practice of medicine to say that
Mm,
you are like the art of medicine, right? So love is the same kind of way. And like there's the theory of unconditional love, but then the actual practice of it, he says that the action of loving is giving. And there's four forms of giving. There is caring for, which is like a mom cares for their child selflessly, like they labor for that love. And it's almost like if you say you love plants, but then you don't care for those plants, it's like, do you actually love the plants?
mm,
Right. And
mhm.
then responding to, so like responding in a way of like giving from not sacrifice, but responding to someone's needs, but also like looking at, are you responding to yourself in the way that you need? Right. There's respect, which was like a huge one. Um, Respect for me was like the biggest kind of lesson in my last iteration of this relationship, because respect, it comes from the root word of recipere. I don't know if I said that right, but it means to be seen and to let someone unfold as they are in their own way for their sake, not yours. And so that kind of reminds me of this question that you're talking about of, can we respect another human being enough to know that they're on their own journey
Yeah.
and let them unfold for their sake, not ours, which is so hard to do, right? When I mean, I resonated with you a lot when you said you're like trying to like change the other person. I've done that in many relationships.
Yep.
The relationship that I had with Matthew like years ago, I just kept being like, this is why you need to like, we need to get a, you need to get a remote job. I've gotten a remote job finally. Like, I want to go travel. Come take pictures of me. Like, let's travel the world together.
Yep.
Right. And that wasn't his journey. I wasn't allowing, I wasn't respecting him for who he was and what he wanted and letting that unfold for his sake and not mine. And so I tried at that relationship for about over a year of trying like to do my own work and not trying to change him. And that for me led me to realizing like I did want to leave because I did want something else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's how I got there. But that would just be in like my own personal experience and how I would make that decision. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's right for everyone.
No, I love that.
And we weren't married, but
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it really does all come to like what do you truly want like out of a relationship? Do you want a relationship where you do every single thing together and you're conjoined at the hip and you have the same dreams and you do business together and you eat together and like you do all the things together? It is not wrong to want that. And if you want that, perfect. And yeah, if your partner isn't um able to like work on that with you and like try like try to be kind of as one with you, then yeah, it's definitely worth considering leaving. But I feel like it goes back to these like expectations that have been put on relationships or these like traditional ways of doing relationship, which like you might not even want that. Like um a lot of questions I get like on my hotline is like about sex, and they're like, he never initiates sex, like we don't have enough sex, da da da. I'm like, do you genuinely want to be having more sex, or do you just think you should be because that's what you think a healthy relationship should be like? If you actually really don't care that much, then you have to look at like what do you actually want. Because also like I I keep having these like voices come in. So me and Henry are currently long distance. Like we don't live together. He lives in LA. I live in Salt Lake City. We're like a 11-hour drive away from each other. So like very long distance, and yeah, I'll like have these thoughts of like, well, like when are we going to move? When are we going to move in together? And like we need to like have a plan for moving in together and da 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 da. And I'm like, do we really like do I actually want that? In a lot like in some ways, yes, like I miss him all the fucking time, but at the same time, I actually quite enjoy like having my own life because I'm still young. I'm doing my DJ stuff. I want to go out and party and like do all my things with my friends and my family. And I love living in Utah. He has very much his own life. Like he is working on his career. He has all his things he's doing in LA. And yeah, I keep having this voice come in of like, but you guys should live together. Like you guys have been together, what? We've known each other for 6 years now. Like you guys should live together. You've already lived together. And it's just this like programming or this societal pressure of like what I think it should look like, when in reality, we're super good where we're at. Like
mm-hmm.
we're chilling. I actually like quite enjoy the setup we have. I would like to see him a little bit more, but I like the setup we have. So I think it's so important to like pull back these traditional expectations and really ask yourself what what do you want? Do you want to be on the same path as someone, or do you just think that you should be on the same path and growing in the same way together? You don't need to be.
Mm-hmm.
You really don't.
Yeah. I think that really comes back to what you said before about like the ego versus your intuition.
Yeah.
Like really tapping into that intuition, that inner voice to see, is that what I really want? Is it okay to want that? Is it okay to have that? Um, versus the mind and the mind's limitations around what's available, what's allowed, that kind of thing. I would be really curious because you mentioned earlier about when you were going between these two tracks of I was really confused and I didn't know if it was like my ego or my inner voice slash intuition. Did you ever like figure out how to land whether or not it was your intuition or not? Because that was something that I struggled with a lot in leaving my relationship with Matthew, because every time I went to go ask the question to my inner voice of, is this the relationship for me? My mind had so much drama about it that it like couldn't come through. What happened for you?
Yeah, oh my gosh, yeah, I was such a mess trying to find an answer, and I was even doing the thing where I was, like, asking for I remember I was, like, on a trip with my family, and I was like, "If I should stay in my relationship, show me a blue butterfly." And this butterfly flies by, and I can't for the life of me see what color it is. I'm literally jogging down the side of this river like, "What color is this butterfly?" Like, I need to fucking know. Honestly, I don't think I ever really got to a point where I'm like, I know exactly that this is my ego or my intuition. And maybe this is just something that I haven't fully learned in my journey yet. Cause again, I've learned that like I know nothing and I have so much to learn. But in this moment, like I very much stand in kind of this belief that like I don't really need to know necessarily like for sure if it's my ego or intuition. If I feel something in my gut that like I need to do this, even if it is a little bit my ego, I still think that the decisions I make, if they feel right for me in that moment, it's leading me to something in some way somehow. So even now, like I look back at, going to live whatever this other lifestyle and traveling and dating and stuff like that, like, was that my intuition telling me to do that? No, I still think part of it was maybe like my ego of wanting to live this like lavish lifestyle, but my soul gave me the ego I have to lead me through paths to learn lessons that I need to learn. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that idea. Like, I really like the idea that like our soul picked the mind that we have with this, with the
Yeah.
beliefs that we have to help guide us in the direction. I think that's beautiful
Yeah.
and amazing. I really like that.
Yeah, cuz I
That's good.
I mean even if it was my ego, it doesn't matter. Again so grateful that I went through that whole experience because now yeah, just I learned so many things. Learned.
I feel like do you remember your authority in human design? I feel like you are a sacral generator.
Yeah, I'm a sacral
Yeah.
generator.
So that makes sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So your gut like guides you.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, and like you were saying, it's just I think a big part of just confidence and empowerment is just getting to a point where there is no right or wrong necessarily and just being able to just make decisions and yeah, not freak out about the outcome, just knowing that like I love when people say like what's meant for you will never pass you. You know what I mean? Like you really can't make
Hmm.
a wrong decision if it feels right in the moment. Like no matter what, it'll lead you back to something it'll lead you to something bigger or better. Again, whether that's your ex or it's someone new or whether it's your old job opportunity or a new job opportunity, like things will work out. So don't stress too much about the decision. Just or if it's like your ego or your even we had a conversation in my membership the other day of like it's kind of like the nature versus nurture conversation of how do you know if something's like actually authentic to you or it was like programmed in you at such a young age
Built
that it
into
just
you.
feels
Hmm.
authentic. And I'm like, we're just trying to solve a problem with our mind that the mind is creating in the first place. It's like we don't even need to know, is this actually authentic or is it not? Do it feels good.
Hmm.
It's not so serious. Like, yeah, not so serious.
It's so hard when you're in it to make it not feel serious.
Oh yeah.
I think there's a level of like, I don't know. I'm also learning a lot about trauma now too. I don't think I had ever really experienced trauma in this way before.
Hmm.
And so a lot of what happens in trauma responses is it's really hard to like ground down into who you are. And so during a time where everything's like up in the air and you feel like life isn't really real or like what you're experiencing is just so, I don't know, the word that's coming to mind is bewildered. Like
Yeah.
it was hard to like ground down into figuring out like who am I, what am I doing? And it really had to just be like what feels okay. Not even what feels good, but like what feels okay right
Yeah.
now. So
Totally.
I love it.
Oh my gosh, so many good things. Well, is there anything else that you feel like you want to share about? your experience? Any other little topics? I feel like all the questions I had written down, we kind of just touched on them along the way. I have like
I moved
one more
through
thing I
them.
might want to talk about, but
Yeah. No, bring it up.
okay. The last thing I want to talk
Yeah.
about is just because this has been such a huge thing for me and I feel like other people will resonate, is just other people, like outside of the relationship. Like, what has it been like for you handling whether it be friends or family that have opinions, or yeah, even, we were both terrified to just talk about this and put it out onto like the internet, social media. What has kind of been your experience just dealing with other people's opinions in general?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that I know that my most personal and closest, like family and friends, will support me no matter what I do. However, they had strong opinions about what happened. So when I navigated, I felt like I had to keep everything very separate. It was almost like I would have these conversations with my partner and we would be unpacking it. And then I may or may not tell other people about what we've unpacked because I just like couldn't handle outside information trying to influence me because I knew that whatever other people were telling me, it was their own perception based off of their things that they've gone through. And a lot of the people around me hadn't experienced losing a child at 13 weeks. So a lot of people that surrounded me hadn't been in a situation where they've experienced a miscarriage and then their partners had a very different experience from them. Like, I don't know. I actually don't think I've even spoken to anyone who has been in the same exact experience as me,
Mm-hmm.
having the same problems and issues that I had coming out of that. So, everyone else's opinions were almost like irrelevant to me because it was kind of like, I love you guys and I appreciate you. And I know that you want the best for me and keep being there for me in the ways that you know how to be there. But also, I'm going to like do what I need to do in this lifetime, which is I am committed and determined and I'm staying in this until I choose not to stay in it because I love this human being. I told him I was going to spend the rest of my life with him. And right now it's shitty and we're hitting rock bottom. And I'm not coming out of rock bottom without him. And I would rather come out of rock bottom without him and then us decide to go our separate ways than to like not do it together. And
Mm-hmm.
I was just I feel like I got to this place of where I made this decision of I need to do this for me. And once I hit that decision, I'm typically pretty committed to it. And then everyone else either has to get on board or they're not on board. And it's like not my problem anymore. The part to me that was scary was what we talked about before of it's hard for me to share where I'm at when I'm in the middle, when it feels messy. People will ask, like my close friends will be like, "Oh, how's it going? What's going on?" And I just give them a very like high level, like things are good, like this is happening and this is happening, or things like we're kind of rocky today and this is what's happening and this is what. But I try to keep it like high level. But then when it
Mm-hmm.
comes also to like sharing to like millions of people who listen to the podcast, um, again, it just feels very different for me because I'm sharing in the middle. I'm not sharing at the end. It's not like we're re-engaged now and we have a wedding date set and we're pregnant again. Like that's at the point in which I would feel more comfortable sharing with everyone is like, hey, this all
Mm-hmm.
happened and now we're married and we're pregnant. We've got our baby coming on the way and we're so excited. I'm sharing in the middle of like, we both know we want the same things. We've come out of a very traumatic event where we were really struggling. And I'm so proud of us. Even if things were to like, we would go our separate ways, I'm so, so fucking proud of us for getting to like where we're at now because I didn't really see it happening. It was so hard. So I'm so proud of where we are now that it's almost like I don't think anyone else knows enough information to adequately talk to me about
Yeah.
what I just experienced.
Mm-hmm.
Does
And
that make sense?
totally. And I mean, I I personally, and I think most people will see it as more admirable for you to show up in the space and share and celebrate what might look like a little win in the grand scheme of things, of you just getting out of rock bottom and being where you are. Celebrating that is being a real fucking human being. And I see that as being so much more of an admirable leader than only showing up when it's all good and pretty and being like, okay, here I am now, look at how like amazing everything is. Like, no, that's not what helps people. Like, oh, like great, everything's like rainbows and butterflies now. No, what helps people is seeing you in the shit and hearing the stories of just us being in the mess. Like that is what I feel is
Mhm.
so powerful, and honestly just been always such a big part of my business as well. Like I'm the bitch that gets on the mic and is like, let me tell you what's going on today and everything that is wrong with me and whatever. But, that is what people want. They want that genuine human connection. We're so past the Kardashian era of like filtered, beautiful, everything looks great and perfect. People want real because everyone's messy. And yeah, I just love you so
We're all
much.
just humans.
Yeah.
I love you. I love you. Tell us about your experience with that. I know you were kind of talking earlier a little bit about,
Yeah.
maybe that was like a struggle of yours.
Yeah, that is like I think the biggest struggle, and I want to speak about it like carefully when I speak of other people. But like what I'll say is I think that my decisions and my side of the story has just been perceived so negatively from the other party.
Right.
um
Hmm.
just yeah, like I think Henry's friends and family, it's definitely going to take some time for me to um like gain trust back, because from their perspective they just see me up and leaving, and they don't like, no one sees what goes on behind closed doors, like even things that I haven't shared on here and probably will never share publicly. Like relationships are complicated, and anyone that's been in a relationship knows like no one fully understands, whether it's super complex or not complex, it's still complex. It's two human beings like being, in relationship together, and like there's just so much that other people can't see or hear or feel. And I think, just me up and leaving, and like to a lot of people it seemed very abrupt, and then, going and just doing my own thing. There's just a lot of perceptions about me that are very difficult to handle, and have also like, they didn't do this to me. I'm doing this to myself. I'm not blaming anyone, but I think that I've fallen so far out of my power because so many people have made me feel like I am horrible and like I've done so many things wrong and I should feel so guilty for so many things. And so yeah, I think I just like, me and Henry know where we're at. Like we have had like not even hours and hours, days upon days if you put all the hours together of like conversations. And we know where we're at, and we know where we're at, but other people, it's hard to not let it like affect you. I think like for me,
Hmm.
especially, when people, like one thing we always like took so much pride on was like how much like our friends and families like love each other, and like it was just this whole happy family, and now it's not, and I'm just starting to mend relationships with people on like his side, quote unquote, and so yeah, it's just interesting, but I think it's also a really uh what's the word? Like it's like a very like raw human thing to like mend relationships and have hard conversations. And so it's not fun, but I definitely will say like it's not fun and I'm not excited. I think it'll be interesting to navigate like mending a lot of these relationships, and again like kind of helping me to like own up and be a better person and be like a really amazing partner, not to prove myself, but in a way to prove myself. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm having
Yeah.
a hard time finding the words, but like it's this opportunity for me to really like show up and grow and be like, you guys all perceive me as this person, and I really want to show you that I'm actually this person and I can be this person, not to prove to them, but just to improve myself and like hopefully gain trust back. But yeah, it's just definitely been interesting. My friends and family, I forgot to mention, are like of course like so supportive and they see me. But yeah, from the outside looking in, I think a lot of my journey this past year can be judged in a lot of ways.
And I think that all comes from preconceived ideas of the broader collective.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if we could get to a place, I mean, this feels like a bigger, like what I call the Braveheart movement of like learning how to
Mm.
do heartbreak differently. Of
Yes.
it's just really a fascinating thing that we feel like it's not okay to end relationships for self exploration.
Yeah.
Like that, it's like sometimes mind blowing to me because would you rather be in a relationship with someone who's constantly second guessing themselves about their life choices, or would you rather be in an amazing, beautiful, authentic relationship with someone who's tried out their choices and then actually chosen this one? Like,
Exactly. And to tell
and
somebody that you never loved them in the first place just because you're choosing to explore yourself, like that is just something. Yeah, I love that you call it like a Braveheart movement. I am on board with the Braveheart movement. Like it does not mean that you never loved a person if you explore other things, or like there's just so many weird beliefs around breakups.
yeah, and it's a collective, and so it's not bad or wrong that people have that collective idea. It's just gone on so long with not being questioned. We haven't allowed ourselves to explore all the other reasons and start making all of these other reasons acceptable and natural and normal and okay. Because I think if we did do that, there would be a lot less cheating and there would be a lot less self sabotaging in relationships because it would be easier to come forth and have an open conversation about, I don't know if this is the relationship for me.
Yeah.
But because that isn't acceptable to end a relationship when everything's going fine, we then self sabotage the relationship. We start pulling back. We make problems in the relationship. We cheat. Like, we almost feel like there has to be a real reason for people to break up. And what if that wasn't necessarily the case? Because on the other side of that, then people would stop making it mean something about themselves. They would stop making it mean that there was something wrong with them, that they weren't enough, that they weren't worthy. Like, it's not necessary. That's not required.
Yeah.
And if we could just all get on board with like having a more relaxed and neutral reason for completing a relationship, I don't think that that would happen as often.
Yep, 100%. I love that so much. I mean, even just the concept of um, a long-term relationship being a successful relationship. Like I even had to catch myself earlier of like when I said a long-term relationship, I'm like, no, I mean committed, because I just don't think long-term should necessarily even be a goal. Like a 3-year relationship can be a highly, highly successful relationship. And yeah, I think we have a long ways to go on this, because I think there's also a lot of just personal healing and not taking things personally that just like needs to happen before we can all shift this. But we're heading in the right direction. And yeah, I dream of a world where we don't take relationship things so personally and it gets to be this really like just beautiful thing of like alignment. Like it's way more about alignment than it means about you. And
And connection, right? Like, again, with all this research I'm doing with like old school psychology, is that it's all, we're meant to be connected. We're human beings who are meant to be in groups and be connected with other people and live in combination with other people. So instead of trying to manipulate our lives by like removing triggers, it's really learning how to like integrate your life with human beings and letting other humans be themselves while also simultaneously letting yourself be yourself, and then meshing from that, what you said, aligned place.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Amen.
Much easier said than done. Well, I will, like, so easy to say that. It's another thing to practice it.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, that's why I think it's like so amazing what you do. And I mean, just what so many coaches do in this world and just leaders is just to like, yeah, start making these shifts because yeah, it's way easier said than done. But the more we say it and we talk about it and we normalize it and we share these stories, like the more we are going to be able to, shift into that more easily. So yeah, thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing all the things.
Thank you.
And
This was so good. I'm very excited to share this.
yeah, I am too. I feel we both like weren't sure. Like we got on the call this morning, you guys, and we're like, what are we doing? How are we doing this? What's gonna like how is the flow of the conversation gonna go? Like there was just so many questions even for us on sharing all of this, but I couldn't be happier, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So good.
amazing.
Thanks, Boo. I love you so much.
Yes, I love you and we love everyone listening. And like we said, like this is really like opening the conversation for us. So I'm sure like my audience might have questions for me. Dorothy's audience will definitely have questions for her. So don't hesitate to reach out and share your thoughts, share your perspectives, and yeah, have a conversation with us. Like that's why we're here. So you can find us on Instagram. We'll leave things in the show notes. Um,
Yeah. We could also do like a follow-up Q&A maybe if
we
we
could
have enough like follow-up questions.
Yeah, we could even
Mhm.
do like an Instagram live or something like that. Could be
Yeah.
really fun. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah, I would like that.
let's do it. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for listening.
We love you all.
Yes, we love you guys. Have the best week. And yeah, we'll catch you guys on both of our podcasts in our next episodes. Bye, guys.
Yay.
If you're loving the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast and you want to learn how to get over your ex in 3 months or less to build a life better than the one you thought you had with your ex, I would like to personally invite you to my next group course where we take everything you've learned here on the podcast and apply it to your life. Come check it out at www.lifecoachdorothy.com.